Do you know what triggers your asthma? That's the question we'll be exploring today. Asthma, as we know, is a chronic condition that affects the airways, making it difficult to breathe. But what makes it flare up? What causes those bouts of coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath? The answer lies in understanding your personal asthma triggers. Asthma triggers, simply put, are things or conditions that can set off asthma symptoms. They're like the villains in our story, disrupting the peace and causing chaos. But remember, every villain is unique, and so are asthma triggers. They can vary greatly from person to person, which is why it's so important to identify your specific triggers. For some, it might be allergens like pollen, dust mites, or pet dander. For others, it could be environmental factors such as air pollution or sudden changes in weather. Even certain foods, strong smells, or strenuous exercise can be a trigger for some. The list is long and diverse, much like the people who live with asthma every day. But here's the good news. Once you know your triggers, you can take steps to avoid them or lessen their impact, helping you manage your asthma more effectively. It's like having a secret weapon against those villains. Isn't that empowering? So, how do you identify your triggers? Well, it involves a bit of detective work. Keeping an asthma diary, for example, can help you track your symptoms and identify patterns. Regular checkups with your healthcare provider are also crucial in managing your asthma effectively. In the coming scenes, we'll delve deeper into different types of triggers, from the common culprits to the less obvious ones. We'll also provide some practical tips on how to identify your personal triggers and manage them effectively. Identifying your triggers is the key to managing your asthma effectively. So let's delve into some common triggers. Together, we'll unravel the mystery of asthma triggers, equipping you with the knowledge you need to breathe easier. Stay tuned. Among the most common triggers for asthma are allergens. These tiny particles can be found almost everywhere, from our homes to the great outdoors. They may be invisible to the naked eye, but their effects on those with asthma are anything but unseen. Let's talk about a few major allergens. First up is pollen. These tiny grains are released by trees, grasses, and weeds for fertilization. But when inhaled by someone with asthma, they can trigger inflammation and tightening of the airways. Then we have dust mites. These microscopic critters thrive in warm, humid environments, making our homes their perfect playground. But the proteins in their droppings can trigger asthma symptoms. And let's not forget about pet dander. We all love our furry friends, but the microscopic flakes of skin they shed can cause an asthma flare-up. Now you might be thinking, how can I possibly avoid all these allergens? Well, the truth is, you can't completely, but there are ways to minimize your exposure. For pollen, try to stay indoors on high pollen count days, and keep windows closed to prevent it from entering your home. For dust mites, regular cleaning and using dust-proof covers on bedding can help. And for pet dander, regular grooming of your pet and limiting their access to certain areas of your home can make a significant difference. Remember, these are just a few examples. Other allergens like mold spores and cockroach droppings can also trigger asthma. It's all about identifying what triggers your symptoms and taking steps to control your exposure. Creating an asthma-friendly environment by minimizing exposure to allergens is a crucial step in managing your symptoms. The journey to breathe easier may seem challenging, but with knowledge and proactive measures, it's entirely possible. Stay tuned for our next segment where we'll explore environmental factors as asthma triggers. Until then, keep breathing easy, health warriors. Our environment plays a significant role in triggering asthma. It's a vast world out there, and while its beauty often leaves us in awe, there are aspects of it that can trigger an asthma attack. Two key environmental factors stand out: air pollution and changes in weather. Air pollution is a major concern, especially in urban areas. The invisible particles in polluted air can invade our lungs, causing inflammation and triggering asthma symptoms. These particles include car exhaust fumes, factory emissions, and even cigarette smoke. While we may not have control over the air quality outside, we can certainly take steps to reduce exposure, such as avoiding heavy traffic areas, staying indoors on high pollution days, and advocating for clean air policies. Changes in weather can also provoke asthma symptoms. For some people, cold, dry air can tighten the airways, leading to an asthma attack. For others, hot, humid days can cause difficulties. Even a sudden change in temperature can be a trigger. While we can't control the weather, we can prepare for it. Dressing appropriately, using scarves to warm the air before it enters our lungs on cold days, and staying hydrated and in cool areas during heat waves can help. Of course, these are just two of the many environmental factors that can trigger asthma. Others may include strong odors, such as perfume or cleaning products, or even high pollen levels on a windy day. In our upcoming episode, we'll delve into natural remedies to help manage these environmental triggers. We'll explore methods to detoxify your indoor air, strategies to adapt to weather changes, and more. It's all about empowering you to live your best life, even with asthma. By understanding and navigating these environmental challenges, you can reduce your asthma symptoms. Remember, knowledge is power. And in this case, it's the power to breathe easier. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue this vital conversation on managing asthma naturally. Apart from allergens and environmental factors, there are other common triggers you should be aware of. Exercise, for instance, can often lead to an asthma flare-up. This is known as exercise-induced bronchoconstriction. While it might sound counterintuitive, don't let this discourage you from staying active. There are ways to manage this, and we'll cover that in a future episode. Next, let's talk about stress. It's not just bad for your mental health, it can also trigger asthma symptoms. This happens because stress and anxiety can cause your body to produce certain chemicals that might make your airways react. Learning stress management techniques can be a big help. Cold and flu viruses are another common trigger. They can cause inflammation and swelling in the airways, which can lead to an asthma attack. That's why it's so important to keep your immune system strong and get your annual flu shot. And then, there's food. Yes, certain foods and additives can also trigger asthma symptoms. These might include sulfites found in processed foods like dried fruits, canned goods, and wine. It's not common, but some people also have asthma symptoms after consuming dairy, eggs, shellfish, or nuts. So if you notice a pattern, it might be worth discussing with your healthcare provider. Finally, certain medications can also trigger an asthma attack. These include aspirin, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and beta blockers. If you're prescribed these medications, make sure your doctor knows about your asthma. Each person's triggers are unique, and what causes a flare-up in one person might not in another. That's why it's so important to work with your healthcare provider to identify your personal triggers. In the end, it's all about understanding your body, listening to it, and responding to its needs. When you know what triggers your asthma, you can take steps to avoid those triggers and manage your symptoms more effectively. Knowing these triggers will help you manage your asthma better. Some triggers are not as common, but are equally important to identify. Asthma isn't always triggered by the environment or allergens. Sometimes it can be set off by factors that seem unrelated at first glance, like certain medications. For example, aspirin and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, commonly known as NSAIDs, can exacerbate asthma symptoms in some individuals. Beta blockers, medicines often used for heart disease, high blood pressure, and migraines, can also potentially trigger asthma symptoms. If you're asthmatic and need to use these medications, it's important to have a conversation with your healthcare provider to discuss alternatives or strategies to minimize potential risks. Another less common trigger could be hormonal changes. Yes, you heard it right. Hormonal fluctuations, particularly in women, can lead to asthma symptoms. Times of hormonal change, such as menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause, may affect asthma control in some women. If you notice a pattern of worsening asthma symptoms during these times, it's worth discussing with your healthcare provider. Lastly, let's talk about a condition that's often overlooked as an asthma trigger: gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD. This is a condition where stomach acid frequently flows back into the tube connecting your mouth and stomach. This acid reflux can irritate the airways and trigger asthma symptoms. If you have both asthma and GERD, managing your GERD may help control your asthma symptoms. Every individual's asthma triggers are unique, and these less common triggers are no exception. They may not affect everyone, but for those they do, identifying them could be a game changer in managing asthma. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about what triggers your asthma, the better you can avoid these triggers, or at least prepare for them. Identifying these less common triggers can be a game changer in managing your asthma. So how can you identify your personal asthma triggers? It's a question many of us have grappled with. But don't worry, we've got some handy tips to help you figure it out. First, consider keeping a symptom diary. This is a record of when your asthma symptoms occur and what you believe may have triggered them. Did your symptoms flare up after a walk in the park? Or perhaps after cleaning your house? Jotting down these observations can help you identify patterns and potential triggers. Second, you may want to consider allergy testing. Allergens are often the unseen culprits behind asthma flare-ups. An allergist can help you identify specific substances you're allergic to. This could be anything from pet dander to certain types of food. Remember, knowledge is power. Third, Don't underestimate the importance of working with a healthcare provider. They can provide you with valuable insights based on their expertise and experience. They can also help you develop an action plan to manage your asthma effectively. And finally, be patient with yourself. Identifying your personal asthma triggers can take time. It's a journey of discovery and understanding. As you learn more about your triggers, you'll become better equipped to manage your asthma. Don't forget, everyone's asthma is different. What triggers one person's asthma might not affect another person at all. So it's really about understanding your own body and what works for you. In the end, it's all about empowering yourself with knowledge. The more you understand about your asthma triggers, the better you can avoid them and keep your asthma under control. Remember, the more you know about your triggers, the better you can manage your asthma. We've covered a lot today about asthma triggers, from the everyday allergens like pollen, dust mites, and pet dander, to environmental factors such as air pollution and weather changes. We've also dug deep into other common and uncommon triggers that might not be on everyone's radar. As we've seen, these triggers can be as unique as we are, varying greatly from person to person. We've also learned the importance of becoming detectives in our own lives, identifying what specific factors set off those unwelcome asthma symptoms. Because remember, effective asthma management begins with knowing your triggers. It's about understanding what your body reacts to and learning how to minimize exposure or how to cope when exposure is inevitable. But identifying these triggers is only half the battle. The next step is learning how to manage them, and that's where our upcoming episode comes in. We'll be exploring natural remedies and strategies to help you keep those triggers at bay and to maintain control over your asthma. We'll discuss how to create an asthma-friendly environment, how to handle unexpected triggers, and how to strengthen your body's defenses. We want to empower you, our health warriors, with the knowledge and tools to take control of your asthma and live your life to the fullest. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Millions across the globe are battling asthma every day, and together, we can make a difference. So don't forget to tune in next time as we continue this important conversation. We'll uncover ways to navigate through the world of asthma triggers naturally, equipping you with practical, holistic strategies for a healthier and happier life. Join us in our next episode, where we'll explore natural remedies for managing asthma triggers. Until then, stay healthy, stay aware.